All right. So today's topic is to stop rushing life. Stop rushing life. I like this topic because it lets us slow down, right? And there's actually so many facets to this. By the way, as I go, I'm just going to see what comes up and what comes through. And if you guys have a question or comment, just raise your hand. We'll bring it into the conversation. Sound good? Cool. Yeah, so stop rushing life. What does that really mean, right? You know, one of the things that I notice even here in Bali, I've lived here for 17 years. And I'm, probably like many of you, I'm going on a motorbike, I'm going all over the place. And so I'm kind of rushing by things. And occasionally, my wife and I, we'll go walking around, we'll do like some window shopping, which, by the way, I found out window shopping doesn't mean you stay outside and look through the window. You go inside. She tricked me. But all of a sudden, there was these shops and stores, and I was like, oh, look, this one's new. She's like, that's been there for months. What are you talking about? Because when we're rushing through life, we're not noticing life. We're just trying to go from one place to the next place, from point A to point B. We're so focused on a destination that we don't really see what's going on along the way. And I know we've heard this kind of stuff all the time in spiritual talk, right? In conscious communities, we talk about this. Smell the roses along the way. It's the journey, not the destination. But all we do is we talk about it, but we don't do it. And I don't think that's not because you don't want to. I think that there's some unconscious things going on that keep you focused on the destination, on the next place, on the next phase, the next communication, the next whatever, instead of, oh, what's happening right now? And I think that's how we can slow down. We take a pause, right? Maud had asked earlier if Christina and I met in silence. And for me, silence, I did a year of silence. That was my pause. Right? That was probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned out of that practice was there's this power in taking a pause and stepping back for a moment and just watching what's happening without engaging immediately. Because more often than not, when we engage, we're engaging not in that moment, but with what was from the past. Have you guys noticed that? Right? Because imagine if there's a river going by and you're like, okay, I'm going to go in the river right at this point, and you're like, nope, too late. And if you do go in it, then it's in your history rather than your present or your future. And I think this is where our focus often is in our past. We're looking backwards at life, which is why it looks to us like it's rushing by all the time. So maybe it's not even that we're in a rush, but we've gotten so familiar with what it looks like for things to just be going. Whereas if we could turn around and start to see what's coming towards us, it would slow everything down. But as far as we are looking this way, then we're going this way kind of fast as well. And we're not noticing the things that are coming to us, the resources and support, possibilities and potential. And that probably also gives us a bit of a short attention span, I think, right? Imagine if I don't know if any of you have ever sat in one of these kind of cars, but there were these old Volkswagen wagon kind of things, I think, and you could sit backwards in it. There was a little chair in the back, and you could sit backwards watching life go away. But the problem is that means that you start to condition yourself to believe that everything's always leaving you. So what are you going to do then? You're going to rush through it when it comes because you're like, well, I'm going to get the most I can as fast as I can. Instead of pausing and going, oh, this is in my life right now. I can enjoy it. I can take time with it. Because we're in a rush, there's a part of our brain that's thinking, this isn't going to last. That ring true for anybody here? That maybe you don't really sit in the beauty of an experience because you're already waiting or expecting that it's going to pass. You're preparing for its passing. I see this happen a lot in relationships. Right? We do a lot of relationship coaching for people, and it's amazing. People will come in and they'll be like, they just met somebody. And they're like, no, they're the one. They're my soulmate. I'm going to be with them for life and this and that. And they're so excited. So, wow, how long have you known them? I met them yesterday. And the problem about rushing in is that just as fast as you went in, just as fast as it went away. Because we talked to them a few days later and they're like, no, they left town. They're short visa. Right? And so instead, what would happen if we were starting to watch what's coming towards our life, actually also intentionally direct ourselves in the direction of what we want in our lives, and then choose so that we ride along with it, right? So we're going to flip the paradigm even a little bit more here. If you're looking backwards at your past, things are just going away. If you're looking forward, things are coming towards you. In your present moment, that's the person that's next to you, riding along with you in your journey. Or the experience, or the job, or the profession, or the service, or whatever experience. The one that's with you presently is the one that's moving with you. That one's going to last if you're not in a rush to get to the next moment. So we start to slow down. Now, originally, I actually chose this topic not so much for this idea of slowing down, but more so because I see a lot of people trying to get shortcuts in life. Right? We're all looking for the shortcut to wealth, the shortcut to love, right? The shortcut to health. We're trying to find the hacks. But the problem with that is, if you really think about it, if you're doing shortcuts in life, doesn't that mean you're cutting life? That means it's shorter. That's not where you want to go. Right? The same reason I never understand why people are in such a rush to get to a destination. Because that destination is always that place where somebody says, once I get there, then I'll have achieved everything I wanted to in life. Okay, well then what's left? Death. Why are you in a rush? But yeah, we're looking for these shortcuts, and I see it a lot, especially in social media. Not just in love and business, but especially in wealth, in trying to make money. And I think we're all guilty of it, right? We've all had those moments in our life where we're like, if I could just get that big payout, if I could just this project or that thing or that course I put out, or if I could just get it all in one big sum, and then life would be grand. But we look at the examples in life, and people who win the lottery. Do you know the statistic? Most people who win the lottery, $10 million, $20 million, they're further in debt than they were, within a year, further in debt than they were before they won the lottery. Within a year. Because they never cultivated, over time, slowly and consistently, the mindset and the ability to manage all that money. And so while we're in this rush to take a shortcut to get somewhere, it's kind of like the old video games where you're going through, and if you take the shortcut, you miss all the little coins and the points and the rewards that you got along the way. It's the same in life. If you take the shortcut, you miss all the lessons. Those lessons are critical because when you get the thing you really want, when you achieve that fulfillment, that excitement, that inspiration you've been looking for, you're only going to maintain it if you know how you got there, not if it was just handed to you or suddenly. But here's the interesting thing. Nothing is sudden. Nothing actually just happens overnight. We always see this thing, overnight success. Yeah, that person was trying for years, and it just happened that finally something hit. Right? Nothing is sudden. Everything has a cultivation, just most of the time it's a hidden cultivation that suddenly finally finds expression. There's a great analogy with the bamboo, Chinese bamboo. Anybody heard about Chinese bamboo? Really amazing. What it does is it's underneath the soil for like 7-8 years. Does not sprout. It's underneath the soil, growing roots, getting nurtured, preparing, taking its time. 7 years is a long time. Taking its time. And you have to be consistent in nurturing it. If you don't water it every day, if it doesn't get the right, moisture levels and all these different things, it dies, never sprouts. But consistently being nurtured for over 7-8 years, and then finally it sprouts out, and in about 6 weeks, 12 feet tall. And this is what happens in life, is that when we're not rushing, especially the beginning, what gets to happen is we start to compound the effect. We become cultivated in the experience, and something else occurs at some point. It's an inflection point, right? Everything's a curve. And at first it's like, nothing's happening. Whoa, my goodness! When you're consistent. And that's what the bamboo is doing, right? It's consistently growing its foundation, getting its footing, feeling stability, getting really strong and grounded. And then once it has all of that cultivated, that it took time to do, the expression, the results it wants in life, happen very quickly. But if we're looking for shortcuts, if we're trying to do it before the roots have grown, before we ground it in, then normally what happens is, right? There's nothing to hold you in. And this is why we see a lot of short-lived experiences in life. Again, I'll look at relationships, right? People rush into the relationship and then it's gone. Rush into the relationship, then it's gone. And they're looking for the shortcuts. It's interesting. People, actually, somebody a couple weeks ago, they asked me this. They were making a comment about Christina and my relationship. They're like, I really love seeing you guys in town, like, and the fact you guys do relationship coaching because you're like the only couple that's actually doing relationship coaching. There's a lot of singles out there that are doing it. But you're like the only couple, and you even look like a happy couple. How do you do that? And I was like, well, we work on it. He's like, oh, how often? Every day. And that was it was funny to me because of the question of how often. Every day. Every day. That's consistency, right? Every day you're creating the seed for the next fruit. Can you imagine if you planted an apple tree and then, it sprouts up in the first season, you get apples. And you're like, oh, yes, I love apples. I planted the seed. I nurtured the tree. It took years to grow up. And then the year after that, it's like, I'm going to give you plums. You'd be a little disappointed and probably frustrated, right? This is what we're doing in life, only we didn't take the time to cultivate. We're just like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try this or that, waiting, hoping that one of those is going to grab somebody. Or instead, you take the time to cultivate a balance, a harmony with the people around you, the environment around you, and that is what then makes it a perfect match. I'll ground this in a little bit back into relationship. One of the things that we often say with relationship that really creates the foundation for happiness and a long-lasting relation is that you're choosing and cultivating it, not just settling into it. Because when you do that, then what you do is you are planting that seed of like, oh, we're going to communicate really well. We're going to do this really well. We're going to keep doing this. Now, it's not that you go to a workshop over a weekend, you find out how to communicate, you go back, you're like, we have an amazing relationship. No, it's the first few communications, they're not going to go well. These are the seeds. But you keep planting it. You're consistent through the discomfort. Because change always has a discomfort to it. And I think this is where we shift gears all the time. And one of the reasons also that we're rushing through life. Because when you slow down, it can sometimes be uncomfortable. Because you have to face the things that you were probably rushing to get away from. I'm going to say that again. When you slow down in life, it might be uncomfortable because you have to face the things that you were probably trying to get away from. Right? Most of the time, we're focused on the past, right? And so we're focused on the things that have happened. And I tend to believe that whenever we're focused there, there's only one way in which we can be moving into the future, and that's through avoidance. Right? We're avoiding something we didn't like in the past, or we're avoiding losing something that we did like. But we're not cultivating what we want. And so if we're in this avoidant state, then we're going to have an urgency. Because it's almost like something's chasing us. We imagine in our mindset, right? And we have this urgency to get away from it. So we're constantly running. But again, we're running backwards. So we're looking this way. We're seeing it. We're trying to make sure we see what we're running away from. We're running backwards. This is why we're tripping all over the place. We're having confusion. How many of you don't have clarity about where you're headed in life? Right? See? Because you're looking this way and you're doing this. Right? You're trying to blindly figure out where you're going. The trick is to turn and face it. I was just having a conversation with a client earlier today of this idea of moving through this space right here. This space, it's a very scary space. See, here's your past, here's your future. Now, to get there, you just have to do this. It's fairly easy. It's like a Michael Jackson movie. You just go, hee hee, right? If you just turn around, you turn your focus from the past to the future. The problem is that there's this present moment right here, and it's not that it's the present that's scary. That should be easy. But there's a quality of the present, and it's that you don't know. Here, familiar, you know things. Or you think you do. Most of the time, our memory's not really accurate. But you think you know things. Over here, you're projecting the things that you think you know. Over here. Here, you have no idea until you get there. And so most people, they're like, okay, I'm going to do it. Rodolfo said, move from the past, go to the future. And you're like, hee-haw! You get stuck right here, and I don't know. And you're like, ah! Here's the beauty. If you can embrace those three words, I don't know, a magical thing happens. You can find out. You can find out what it is you don't know. When you embrace, I don't know. But as long as you resist it, just a second. As long as you resist it, you just make up stories. And that's your fears, and the things you're running away from, and you keep rushing through life. Because no matter what, if we're avoiding something, we're still focused on it. So that's the seed that we're planting. While you're here, in the present, start moving yourself towards what you really want, which means finding the clarity of what that is. And that's a tricky one, right? Knowing what you want. Most of us don't know that. We're really stuck again on what we're avoiding in life, and it's been dictating our decisions throughout life. But to really start to orient towards the future, you have to know what direction you're going in. What is it that you want? Where are you headed towards, right? Which means you have to know what you want. And this is a question I ask all of my clients. I do a lot of one-on-one sessions. I've got a healing center down the way. And one of the first things I ask people, what do you want? And it seems like a simple question, but it's not, right? Say, what do you want? And normally people will respond with what they don't want. They'll be like, well, I don't want to suffer anymore, and I don't want that heartbreak, that last relationship, or I don't want to be poor, or I don't want to be sick, right? All these different things come up. And I go, okay, that's what you don't want. That's what you're avoiding. What do you want? First is to have a clarity of direction, right? So, what do you want? And normally what people will say to me after they said all these avoidances, they'll say, well, I don't know. I don't know what I want, right? I don't believe that. I think we all know what we want. Otherwise, why are we disappointed when we don't get it? Why are we disappointed when we see somebody else having it, right? We know what we want. What we may not know is we have permission to have what we want. To have permission to have what we want. Right? Now, to your question about going in the flow with things, right? I think we've kind of misappropriated a lot of spiritual ideas around being in flow and this and that as being completely at the mercy of the universe and just like, okay, whatever, I'm going here and I'm going there. And it unfortunately makes... No worries. It creates a little bit of a lack of safety because there's no consistency in our lives. Creates victimhood. Creates all these other things. It's not actually being empowered in life. But what we can do is create the container, and we'll call it like the bowling alley bumpers, right, of life. You know this is the direction. You've created some bumpers. Then you just throw that ball and let it go, right? See what happens. That part's the flow. Right? In a more practical way to put that, it's knowing your why, what, and how, right? The why in life is always going to be only one of two things, in my opinion. The why is going to be, are you avoiding or are you cultivating? Are you avoiding or are you cultivating? And avoiding will be, are you surviving or are you living? Are you surviving or growing, we'll say, right? Are you surviving or growing? And sometimes you have to be focused on surviving. Sometimes you're in a real dangerous situation. So handle that. But then as soon as you're no longer in that dangerous situation, shift to start to thrive, to live fully, to move towards the things that you want. Which is when you have to look at, okay, what do I want? Right? So the why, surviving or thriving. What? The what, this is an interesting one because I think we confuse it with experiences or achievements or goals. It's like, oh, when I have $1 million, when I find the love of my life, all these different things. But the what, if we really look at it, we kind of chunk down towards it, it's an emotion, right? We want to feel something. We want to feel certain ways. Right? If I asked all of you right now, like, would you like to feel happy? I think almost everybody would agree, right? You know, occasionally we get the sadist in here who's like, no. Right? And so emotion is the what most of the time. We want to feel certain emotions. Great. The how, that's where the flow comes in. The how is where you let life lead you towards it. Because when you decided, I'm going to live life, okay, you're already pointing in the future. Wonderful. You're no longer anchored by the past. You said, what? Oh, I want to feel happy. Great. Now you're oriented specifically towards something. You put yourself in a lane. Right? And now, you can just let life take you along that lane. You can enjoy it. That's the flow. There's a great scene in Finding Nemo. Anybody here seen Finding Nemo? Right? Remember the scene with the sea turtles? That's being in the flow. But it was in a specific area, going a specific way. But then once you're in it, you let go. So a lot of times I think the things that we want, or we've been dreaming about for a very long time, there's an expiration date. Right? If you've been dreaming about it for too long, two things have happened. One, your mind has gotten involved, right? Normally those passionate dreams are coming from the heart. They're coming from a sense of, ooh, this feels aligned right now. And maybe at that time, wherever you were, there was an amazing community. And then it shifted and changed. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I finally got what I wanted at the beginning, but everything else changed around it because you waited too long. Right? There's a book by Mel Robbins called The 5-Second Rule, I think. 5-Second Rule. And it's based on this idea of the brain, that the brain starts to freak out after 5 seconds of hesitation. Because it's hardwired for consistency. So when you get up in the morning and you put your slippers on and maybe you brush your teeth and you do your morning, whatever you do in the bathroom, your brain's like, yeah, we do this every morning. Gotcha, we're good. Right? But then if you pause for 5 seconds on anything, more than 5 seconds, your brain's going, wait, what's happening? Why are we pausing? This is new. This is a change. We're going to die. Right? The brain and the nervous system is very dramatic. Everything is about life and death. Right? There's very little gray zone. So if you pause for even 5 seconds, like even think about it if you saw somebody attractive in a cafe or you were going to pitch somebody on a big deal, like maybe, for instance, I'll give you guys an example. I was sitting in Sayuri's cafe just a few days ago on Sunday, and Jay Shetty was in there. You guys know who Jay Shetty is? Yeah, he and his wife were in town. I think they just left today. And Jay Shetty was sitting there. Now, I saw a lot of people who saw them, and I could tell what was on their mind. They're like, do I go over there? Should I go over there? I want to go over there. I don't know if I'll go over there. I don't want. And then Jay Shetty left. Right? When we hesitate, I did. But again, it's from no hesitation, but yet I still took my time. I didn't rush. So there's a sweet spot, right? Because there's the one level, and we'll come back to what we're talking about with having a dream and then moving towards it. You take a step towards, you begin the journey without rushing. If you're rushing, it's because you think you're going to lose something or something's chasing you, you have urgency, or you don't believe you really deserve it, or whatever it is. And I did see a few people do that, right? They rushed up, hi, it's so amazing to meet you. I'm so glad to please enjoy your meal. Right? Nothing happened between, like they didn't get anything from it then, right? Whereas if you take your time in life, I'll share a little bit of what happened. It was really funny. I was sitting and I was actually at the table here. Jay Shetty and Roddy were there, and I was talking to somebody, and I noticed over her shoulder that Jay was sitting there. I was like, oh. And it kind of came out of my mouth. I was like, oh, I just realized something. And his wife turned over because she heard me, and she kind of smiled at me because she knew that I just realized that they were sitting there. And Jay looks over and he kind of did a little namaste. And then I said, oh, what I just realized that I realized it. We had a little laugh. And then I went back to my conversation and finished my conversation. And probably about 20 minutes later, I walked over and I said, hey, can I make a recommendation about a dessert to have here? And we got into a nice conversation, right? If I had rushed over, would have been done like that, would have just maybe been an inconvenience, right? If I'd hesitated, never would have happened. So there's a sweet spot. And that sweet spot is only found when you stay present. You're not afraid that you're going to lose something. FOMO is a real thing, right? Fear of missing out. But instead, you just take a step towards and you get clarity. And you take another step towards and you get more clarity. And another step towards and you get more clarity, right? Without any focus on, am I going to get the thing that I want at the end? Because instead, you're focused on, am I getting something right now that feels the emotion that I am seeking, right? And that's why we go back to the what. The what is always an emotion. How many people, and I see them do this all the time, they're like, okay, what I really want is I want to make $1 million so that I can feel free and abundant and all these things. And I'm like, okay, great. What are you going to do to get there? I'm going to work a miserable job and I'm going to hustle and I'm going to, burn myself out. I'm going to do all this stuff, but it's worth it because then I'll have the $1 million. Doesn't work out. Because again, what you plant as a seed is the fruit that you get. So if you're planting misery and burnout and exhaustion and all this stuff, you're going to have that $1 million, you're going to be just as discontent. All right, so if you're going to move towards what you want in life, how do you separate that from just pure hedonism, right? Well, there's an interesting question there. Is there anything wrong with that? Right? Now, I'm going to put a caveat to it. There's nothing wrong with enjoying every single aspect of life. What gives misery is when you are chasing pleasurable aspects of life. And hedonism, normally in the sense of an addiction, is that now you are running away from not feeling that pleasure, and that's what's really happening. Right? So you have to see the subtlety, right? But amazing. Live life with pleasure for sure, right? I know this woman she works with, actually the yoga teacher training you guys just finished. And she has such a joy in life that she opened up a dragon fruit one day and she was looking at it, she's like, look at this pink. Wow. So excited, right? So by all means, be hedonistic, pleasure driven, love the desires of life, but don't chase them. Don't be afraid of them going. Don't be attached to them. So one of the things that we found was so critical to success in anything, and especially in relationship, is to choose it, and to choose it with a container of time, right? What that means is you don't sit there, because most of the time when people, especially in relationships, or even if it's like choosing a piece of food or a course or whatever it is, let's say that it's a yoga. Somebody's like, yeah, I know, I really want to do some yoga. And they go to the first yoga class, they didn't feel really good, couldn't stretch as much as the person next to them. They're like, screw it, I don't want to do that anymore, right? That's no commitment. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to do yoga for 30 days, every single day, and I'm going to see how it feels after that, right? There has to be a commitment of time, because otherwise there's no reference of scale and spectrum. You're making a choice based on discomfort, not on cultivation. I believe life isn't working for you or against you, but with you, right? And so we'll use your words of divine grace, right? That you're wanting to be an instrument of divine grace. And so you're not trying to make a personal goal, like I'm trying to achieve this or I'm trying to get there, but rather you want to have something working through you, and you working through it. But to do that, you still have to be active, right? And so it's knowing that there's a communication that happens. And while, yes, there's the harmony of nature and divinity and spirituality and all these different things that can come into it, that's half the equation. The other half is what you choose. A lot of times we make it more about complete submission, and I'm just going to follow. But while it can be rewarding, it also, I think a lot of times, I'll use a different example. There has to be a response from both ends, right? We'll call it from the divine, you, and you towards the divine. There's a story that I like to share. At one point, and this is a false story, it's a little example story. There was this man, and he was very devout, religious, believer, had so much faith, and his God, he knew would always protect him. And at one point, the town that he lived in, it was in this deep valley, there started to be all these rains, and it started to flood. And it starts issuing warnings, and like, guys, we got to evacuate, we got to get out of the valley. And his neighbors are coming, they're like, hey, we're getting on the bus, we're going out. He's like, no, I'm here, I'm going to pray. You probably heard this, right? Here, I'm going to pray, and my God will save me. I'll be okay. Okay, so they go on the bus. Water level's rising. At some point, he's at the second level of his house. He's kind of looking out the window. A boat pulls up, a little canoe. And they're like, buddy, we're collecting the last few people. Get in the boat. We're going. No, I'm praying my God will save me. He's going to save me. Don't worry about me. Okay. So they went. Some point he's up on the rooftop. He's looking up. He's praying. Helicopter comes by, throws down a ladder. Sir, get up the ladder. We're evacuating everybody. Get out. No. I'm praying to get out of the way. He can't see me now. I'm praying to my God, right? And he dies. And he goes and he sits in front of this great God of his, and he goes, dude, what happened? I prayed to you. I had all this faith. Nothing? He's like, what do you mean nothing? I sent you a bus. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. Nothing. Right? So it has to be a conversation, right? Which means that we have a part in it. And so while, yes, it's actually incredibly amazing to have a great faith in something because it is a beautiful driver, right? It gives you purpose. And that gives you a direction. But now somebody's got to start taking the steps. And those steps, hopefully, are ones that you get to enjoy. They don't need to be steps of suffering, right? And that's where you get to make choices. You go, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it for this greater purpose, but I'm going to have fun doing it. And that's where the personal distinctions would come in of desire. First you have to get clear about what you want. Be really clear about that. Right? And like I said, it's normally an emotion that you want. Right? Being of service can even be a sense of emotion, right? Purposeful, really. And then you have to have discernment about the path. I can use a good example. Back in college, my girlfriend at that time, we would go rock climbing all the time. And we'd do some indoor rock climbing, outdoor rock climbing. And whenever we were training and we were indoors, she'd always be like, no, you go first. I realized she was very tricky. Because what she would do, she was very patient. She wasn't rushing into things. I was a military guy back then, so I was like, I got this. Come on, Wall. And I'd go and I'd swing over here and be like, oh, that wasn't a good hold. Okay, and then I'm exhausting myself and I come over here and I do all this stuff. And she'd be down at the bottom, belaying me, holding me, and she's just watching, discerning. Oh, didn't work out for him over there. Didn't work out for him over there. And then once I was done and I was at the top, I'd come back down. She'd go, she'd be like, boop. And so this is life, right? When we slow down long enough to be able to observe what's happening around us, we start to see the patterns. We start to notice and also discern. By the way, discernment, all it means is understanding what aligns with you. What makes you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good, right? You can do this with food. You might even just sit down and look at something and be like, I don't think that's going to make me feel good. But let me try a piece. Nope, it didn't make me feel good. Right? Then you know, and you found out. Again, you had to step in a little bit, right? You had to be curious. Can't do that from not doing anything. You do have to take action. And as you do that, you move into the I don't know, and you find out. The more you find out, the more you start to get clarity of, okay, this is the path I'm going to take. This is how I'm going to get to these things that I want to continue to enjoy. Notice how I just said that. Not how I'm going to get to my destination, but how I'm going to continue to enjoy this feeling. Right? And that's a tricky one because it goes back to your question. Are you chasing the feeling, or are you simply knowing that if you're consistent in certain habits and certain patterns, you're going to keep bringing a new feeling instead of holding on to the old one? Right? Most people are they get a feeling like feeling really expansive. Actually, this happens a lot when people have major meditation and mindfulness experiences where they're like, oh my God, I felt so good. And they're like, I need to get back there. Back there? Oh, you mean back in your past? That doesn't exist anymore? Not going to happen. But if you go, what did I do that allowed me to be there? Okay, let me continue to cultivate that slowly. Not in any rush, because I'm not rushing. Nothing is lost. I'm moving towards it. And we start to recreate the sensations that we enjoy in life, the feelings that we want, by being consistent, not taking a shortcut. The difference between attachment and commitment. Again, it comes back to a container, right? So normally attachment is that something comes into our life and then we want to let it go. Experience, money, whatever it is, possessions, things come into our life and we don't want to let it go. And let's use the example of a banana. A banana comes into your life and you're like, I love this banana. I love its yellow color. I haven't even opened it, so I don't know what it's like inside, but I love this banana. And I'm gonna guard this banana, put it in my backpack. I'm gonna keep this banana secure and safe in my backpack to keep forever. You guys know where this is going, right?
The worst place to put a banana.
Worst place, right? But why? Isn't it going to stay the same? No, nothing does. Everything is always changing, and everything is moving from expression to decay or dissolving, right? It moves out. So from order to chaos, it's everything. But commitment is to say, I want to continue to have bananas. Not that banana, but bananas. And so you take that banana, you eat it, you leave the seeds. Put the seeds in the soil, grow more bananas. Right? But that growth takes time. That's the container. Right? So commitment always requires a container of time. Attachment is normally when we feel time has run out and we're holding. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she's asking, can we look into how you feel about somebody and how they make you feel. Actually, it's very interesting because there is no difference. Because how they make you feel is what you decide. Right? It's the projection of whatever story and how you have represented them. Right? Because somebody, let's say, actually, this has happened a couple of times, where somebody looks over at you and smiles, and you're like, oh. And then you realize they were smiling at the person behind you. Right? So at first they made you feel great. And then all of a sudden they made you feel really bad because you're like, oh no, that's awkward because I smiled back at them and I don't even know them. And right? Or how you feel about somebody, maybe you see somebody walking by, oh hey! And they didn't see you though. And somebody else saw you do this and they didn't respond. You're like, I know them, I swear. I really do. Right? And so how we feel has so much more to do with how we're deciding we're going to feel. Whether it's how we feel about somebody or how they are making us feel, they're not making us feel anything. They're being themselves, and we either resonate with it or not. We choose, right? Yeah, that's good. So we're coming up towards the end of the talk here. So I'm going to do my best, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to do my best to summarize. All right. Little summary of what we've been talking about today of stop rushing life. To stop rushing life. And so we first started to look at, what is it that causes us to rush? And I believe it's because we're looking at our past. And so already there's this mentality that things are rushing by because they're rushing away. And as they're rushing away, we get this contraction in us that's like, oh, things are leaving me. The banana won't stay. And because of that, we get attachment. We try to hold on, but we're holding on in the wrong direction. Instead, what would be the case if we committed to a container into our future? And we said, I'm going to hold on to this pattern, this habit, this commitment towards what I truly desire in life or the purpose and service that I'm giving. And through that, I'm going to live passionately, maybe even hedonistically, and allow life to be enjoyed. Because in the end, that's what we're really looking for. The what of life is always an emotion. To feel joy and happiness and love. These qualities. We can call them frequencies as well if you'd like. Right? We're all moving towards that, but the thing is, if we are moving towards it by trying to run away from something else, we're going to do it too fast. And so just as fast, it's almost like you saw something, you're like, there it is, it's right there, it's right there. Shoot, I passed it. And this is what happens in life, is we go right by the thing that we wanted because we were going too fast, and you can't go backwards. You can't do the U-turn. You ever notice on Google Maps, on like GPS stuff, when you go forward and you pass the stop, it never says, oh, make a U-turn. It just rerouting. Figures out a whole new way to go, right? Because it's looking at life. In life, you cannot go backwards. So once you've passed it, too late. So why not hedge your bets? Go slower. So that you catch it before you pass the off-ramp that goes towards the things that you really want that would bring you fulfillment. So you can catch it. And this is what we mean by not to rush through life, but rather enjoy it. Create consistency and cultivation instead of proficiency and efficiency. Not so proficiency, efficiency. I'm going to say that again because that got real confusing. Create proficiency and cultivation, not efficiency. Sounds weird, huh? Normally we're all being told, be more efficient. Do it faster. Get the shortcut. But you miss so much by doing that. If instead you became more proficient at something, you cultivated your skills at it, you'll still do it faster. You'll recoup faster. You'll step forward faster. But you're not skipping anything. So to stop rushing in life, simply choose something and start to cultivate. And you're going to find exponentially that the results start to come to you and you don't have to do so much anymore. And you're not running from anything. Thank you, everybody.